Hey guys, good afternoon. I wanted to make you a video for science fair because there's a lot of new that went on today and a lot of things that I explained in class, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone was up to speed on what was happening. We are officially beginning our science fair season. This will go through the break, over Christmas break and into the new year, and we will have our science fair, I believe, around the first week or so of February. I will let you know as soon as I have a for sure date on that. So I went over all of this in class. I hope everyone understood really well, but I actually gave your student a copy of my notes. So everything that I'm going to talk about in this video, you should have. So if you want to go ahead and have that while I'm going through it, that might be helpful, but just so you know, you have all of this information. What we worked on today was going over, looking in the guide appendix in the back, going through the science fair portion. So it begins on 122 and goes to page 131. So page 122 to 131 in the guide. So we looked through all of that together. Or most of it. There were a few pages we didn't go into in detail, like how the judges score and all of that. We can go through that later. We had a lot to go through today. But what is the science fair and how does it begin? The science fair really drove home the point today that it should be about excitement and wonder. So it starts with a question, something that you're wondering, and something that you want to set out to answer the question to. Like, for example, Sayla's doing duct tape. What brand of duct tape holds the best? Or is it true that if you speak to plants, they grow taller? Something like that, something that you have heard before and you want to wonder. They told me their ideas. I think they're on a really good path. You can use the website sciencebuddies.org to type in, like, for example, if you want to do something about planes or even duct tape, or if you're interested in making fires, you can kind of get some ideas. And you don't necessarily need to copy those experiments, but looking through, and then we just did a good old-fashioned Google search on science experiments regarding duct tape because that was something that Sayla was really interested in, and we found like 3 or 4 that were kind of interesting, and then we kind of landed on one that we think we like. But this week they need to choose for sure an experiment and a science fair project. And now it's okay if like the actual experiment changes a little bit, but they really need to be settled on just that one really good idea that, of course, like I said, begins with wonder. Because you're going to see that the first step is creating a research problem, which is due next week. But first I want to show you their science fair lab journal. So this is Reese's from when she did Challenge A few years ago, and I brought it in as an example. This starts on page 126 of the guide, how to prepare their journals. We went through and we prepared them pretty much according to what it says in the guide, just putting their names on it. And they did a table of contents page, and then they numbered their pages in their book. Now I explained this book, as you can see, oops, I skipped the table of contents page. This does not have to be like lovely or perfect or even really neat. So this is kind of like your mad scientist journal. They will have this the night of the science fair. And the judges will be able to like look through it and see that they've done it, and it will be something that's, you know, scored on, but not for prettiness, just for that it has all of the components there. And it actually says in the guide not to, you know, rip pages out, but just cross things out, to write in it in pen, to really use this as a place to jot down your ideas. So we actually went through the guide. I made copies of it so we didn't have to cut in their guide, and cut out the science fair schedule like this. And what's going to happen with this is it shows the week that everything is due. This is from before, so we started, it looks like a week earlier last year. So it's going to start on ours for week 11. And every time they come to class with that particular step done, it's going to be signed by me, and they're going to get a point, 1 point that will go towards the evening of science fair. The evening of the science fair, they will already come in with however many points they received. And I do this because I learned in past years that some of the students would not keep up with the schedule that we had in class that's assigned in the guide, and they would do their whole thing over Christmas break or their whole thing like the week before. And I didn't really like that because it takes away from the process. This is really about the scientific method, going through it as a class. And if they're not keeping up with the schedule, it's really hard to have class discussion. So I thought of a way to kind of encourage them to not procrastinate and not make this something that is really stressful for their family, but to keep up with the guide. And if they do that, it's really not stressful at all. We go through it a step at a time, using the scientific method. So it's something that they really understand really well. And that is the point. The point is not to have some elaborate project that stresses you out, not to have pre-bought boards or anything like that. It's really should be their own. And if they keep up with us in class, then it really shouldn't be a stressful thing. So that is the beginning of the Science Fair Lab Journal. And I'm going to ask that they bring this every single week to class so that I can make sure they're keeping up with it and sign off on each step. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we are starting on step 1, which is creating a research problem. And there's an example of this on page 130 of the... Oh, actually, that's not the right page. Sorry, 128. In my notes, I have the wrong page there, so sorry about that. On page 128, there's a sample question. And again, like I said, this is about what got them thinking, what got them wondering, and why did they choose this? And they're allowed to say I. According to the guide, this person says, while at a picnic on a rather warm day, I noticed some people kept mayonnaise in their coolers. And then that goes on to say they wondered why they kept it in their coolers. So you're allowed to say, you know, speak in the first person. So the research problem is really what got you wondering. Shouldn't be too complicated. So like a paragraph, no more than 2 paragraphs, and what got you wondering. That's all that's due this week. Now, this is going to become part of what is called on page 128, called the research plan. And if you notice on page 128 of the guide, it goes through all the sections: research problem, research question, background research, hypothesis, procedure, materials list, all of those things that kind of sound familiar to us from science. And also the things that we wrote today in their lab journal in the table of contents. So their research plan is what they're working on each week. It's like the pieces of the puzzle. And the research plan, okay, ready for this? Because I drove this home to them, and I'll explain it to you because it was so confusing to me in the beginning. The research plan easily becomes the research paper, that final research paper that's going to be sitting in front of their board, sitting in front of them on the night of science fair, that final paper, which should be edited and pretty. If you keep up with it each week by typing it, the research plan really easily becomes the research paper. So what we're going to say over and over, the research plan becomes the research paper if you type it and keep up with it every single week. It really becomes really simple. So they're working this week on step 1 of the research plan, their research problem. So another suggestion that I have, because all of that same information, so each week you'll be working on the research plan, and you'll also be making entries into your lab journal. If you'll notice, the research problem is going to be the exact same information that you just typed out that week for your research, for your plan. So what I allow my students to do is to just save your research plan on your computer, print a copy of it, and tape it or glue it right into here. So then you're not literally writing the same information each week. That's just a little tip that I have, but if you want them to handwrite it, of course they're welcome to. But again, the stuff that goes into this lab journal every week will be put into their research plan, which will be typed and saved on their laptop, which will become the research paper at the end. And as long as they're keeping up with it, it's a really easy process. So that all goes, all of that information is on the notes. And I hope that that makes sense to you. That I know that can get a little weird and a little confusing in the wording of it. But those are the first steps. So next week, I'll be looking for their research problem. And I'll just say really quick, if you're feeling confused about what the research problem versus the following week, the research question that's due, sounds a little weird. The research problem is kind of like a whole paragraph, and the research question sums it all up to what you're actually going to be testing. So in this example in the guide, what happens to the research problem was all about wondering, I wonder why they keep it in the cooler. And the research question is, what happens to an unsealed jar of mayonnaise when stored in a refrigerator versus at room temperature? Does a warmer room temperature change the effect? Is unrefrigerated mayonnaise safe? So it's all the final questions of what you're actually going to test. Again, you want to make sure that these projects are scientific method testable. There has to be something to measure, like temperature, like height, like weight, something simple to measure. I think I drove that home to them today, but I just want to make sure that I let you all know. It doesn't need to be anything too elaborate. You really want to keep it simple, but keep it all about something that hopefully they're interested in doing. And I saw a lot of like little light bulb moments like, oh, that'd be cool if I tested this. It's exactly what you want. You want it to be something that sparks their interest, but isn't going to be stressful for your family or for them in coming up with an experiment, and then being able to just keep up with it week after week. And we go through this together, and it's a really fun process, and it's a really good learning curve. Okay, so I think that officially concludes my science fair portion. But now I'm going to just go ahead, since I have you on here, and I'll just talk about our day, but I'll just officially end right here. And then, so if you need to watch this video again, there's like an end point. So end, yay. All right, so we began the day doing devotion. We just used one verse. It was a proverb. Goodness, I don't have it in front of me, about how, sorry, envy, no, sorry. I forgot what it was. It was about a happy heart brings health to the body, but envy rots the bones. So I thought that was a good one, kicking off Halloween week, about envy rotting the bones, but what it means what it means to have a heart that is happy and peaceful, and what are some things that we can do to have that happy heart. So we prayed and we began the day like that. The first strand that we did this week was Latin. We practiced declining a few of our nouns all the way through. And I believe we did a first declension noun today. So I want to make sure they understand what it means to decline a noun all the way, and that we're drilling that over and over, as well as T-charts. I know I've definitely drilled T-charts with them, but taking an actual noun and going through and declining it in the singular and the plural, giving it all those endings and making sure they know what the translation for each of those endings are, that was really important. And then we reviewed adjectives. They are doing great with adjectives. Really impressed with their understanding of that. So we're just going a little bit further into adjectives, not even the new category, the third declension, not even that yet, just some more and some more exercises. So they're doing great. Let's keep up the good work. We did, oh, and I had a great time listening to their final presentations. They did so great with the mammals, and I really enjoyed getting to hear them all this year in their presentations and watch them grow. So for exposition, that's what we did next. We had our cupcakes, and we also had cheese and bread that went with the book. Had a really good discussion about some really deep and amazing themes, and I was happy with their insight that they had, and they seemed to really like this book. I really like it too. I think it's a good introduction into, you know, more Holocaust readings and things that they're going to be studying in the future, but it's kind of like a gentle introduction to those. This week they are doing Annie charts with 25 items, and they have a new worksheet, and they can begin a new packet. They should all know what that means, but a new worksheet going a little bit deeper into comparison, but they'll find that in their book, and then 25 items per column for the Annie chart. So moving right along with that. The new book that they are starting is Amos Fortune Free, so they can start reading that book now too. They have 3 weeks on that to read that. For cartography, we are working on the next map, the Western Europe, right? Or was it North? Yes. Anyway, the next European map. Sorry if I said that one wrong. And we aren't going to have any more assessments. We're going to stay on Europe until the Blue Book, where we'll be doing the whole, everything we've done so far on the map. So they want to keep practicing and keep practicing connecting things together. We decided today, and I made the call for us, we were invited to go watch the challenge 2 class to their art grant proposal. So I thought that would be great for the kids to get to see their presentations and their projects. So we did cut analogy short. We got through most of the lesson, but I think just like the last paragraph or so, they'll need to read at home and work on that. And then we did not do any formal math together. We watched their presentations in lieu of that. But we got to everything else. We had a wonderful day, and I think they should be fully prepared for week 11. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, bye guys.